What's up everyone, Dustin Jones here, Factory Fox Racer. I'm gonna walk you through the accessories I like to put on my pre-runners and how to adjust your Fox shocks to get that thing dialed back in. So we did this super official social media poll to find out what you wanted to know about your Fox shocks. And by far the most common question that we got was, what accessories do I like to add to my vehicle and how do I get my suspension dialed back in after those accessories? So I'm gonna give you a rundown of my 5 must-have accessories on my pre-runner. But after that, I'm gonna walk you through how to make sure this thing ain't sagging and dragging when you get it weighted down with all these goodies. And keep in mind, these are just good general rules of thumb that I like to follow, but if you want way more in-depth information, go check out ridefox.com/academy. I'm building this Can-Am specifically to pre-run King of the Hammers, and so there's a couple of things that I say do not go to Johnson Valley without. One of them is a tool bag. Not a lot of weight, but it adds up over time. Winch is gonna be on the front of the car, also not super heavy, but what's really gonna put some weight out back of the car that you do need to consider is gonna be the spare tire and spare tire rack. Together, this is gonna be about 120 pounds. One thing that you're never gonna catch me without is what I consider a hydration station, or one of these cool rear-mounted Can-Am ice chests. And this thing will hold a 12-pack of whatever refreshing beverage you choose to take out on the trails. But keep in mind, this thing is gonna be about 30 to 40 pounds with drinks, and it's mounted in the rear with a spare tire rack. So now we're really adding some weight to the rear of the vehicle with this ice chest and the spare tire back there. So you are gonna have to consider your ride height and just plan on making some changes when you start adding this much weight. There's one thing that I can guarantee you're never gonna catch me without, and that is a sweet, jamming stereo party pad, audio roof, whatever you want to call it. But this thing by itself, fully rigged out, is like 75 pounds. So between this, all my other favorite accessories, you're looking at like 250 pounds. So this is like carrying one of your big bone buddies with you on top of the car. So right off the jump, I know when I get all this stuff on there, I'm definitely gonna have to adjust my shocks. We're starting with a brand new all factory Can-Am X3. So the first thing I'm gonna do is take some measurements on this thing, get an idea of the ride height so we have a good starting point. When I check the front, I'm right at 16.5. When I check the rear, it's real close to 16.5. And if you're wanting a good reference for your ride height, go check out the Fox website and they tell you what your ride height should be on a stock weight vehicle. The first accessory that I like to put on, because I obviously like to party and that's the most important, is this audio roof. And it's the heaviest accessory, but it's kind of positioned in the center of the car, so it's gonna affect overall ride height and not just the ride height in the front or the rear. The next accessory we're installing is the winch, and honestly, it's not super heavy and it's kind of mounted out towards the front of the car, so it's not gonna make a huge difference and it's only gonna affect the front end. Next is the tool bag, which is definitely a necessity with me, so it's not really gonna affect the overall ride height. Honestly, I just throw this thing wherever it'll fit, so going under the passenger seat. Now this is what I call one of those just in case accessories, and anybody that rides with me knows I get super wild. So this is gonna be the spare tire rack and spare tire. This is gonna be the most amount of weight, the farthest back on the vehicle. So honestly, this is gonna make the most difference on the ride height in the rear. Now that we've been putting this thing together in the Louisiana heat, I just decided this ice chest is my favorite accessory, even more so than the jam station. Before you measure anything, you need to fill this ice chest up with whatever you plan on putting in there so you can get an accurate measurement of ride height. I'm gonna recheck the ride height on the front and the rear, but I can tell just by looking at this thing, it's really sagged out in the back. So the front's honestly only about a 1/2 inch low, which makes sense because I really only put the winch up front. The roof is kind of in the middle, the tool bag's kind of in the middle, but mainly the weight is back here. So when I check the rear, I'm about 2 inches low. A good rule of thumb that I like to follow whenever I have to run down over 2.5 inches of preload in the front and rear, then it's time for a spring change. So a good source when it comes to spring change is the guys over at Shock Therapy. They can get you set up depending on what the weight of your vehicle is, how many accessories, and kind of what your riding style is. They have a lot of spring choices for you for the Can-Am X3 and a lot of other units. Now that we got the springs adjusted and this thing back sitting pretty, you also need to consider your compression damping in the rear. I would focus only on the rear with this setup, and I would increase the high speed and low speed damping by about 25%. That's a wrap on my 5 favorite accessories that I consider must-haves for my pre-runners and how to get the car sitting back like it's supposed to. So on this season, you can follow along. We're gonna cover all of those things that you guys wanted to see. And if you wanna dive even deeper into shock information, go to ridefox.com/academy.